Welcome to No Apologies on Beck. Woo, we aren't afraid to speak the truth.
If we can speak at all.
Yes.
So we will give you the cue, Jared, when we can start talking. So.
Yeah. One of us needs to be professional.
Yes.
And there's none of us that are professional.
All right, so folks, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hilarious.
We are going right into, with segment one, to, obviously we have a guest in-house, and that guest is Jared Hendrix, chairman of District 5? No.
District 38.
38.
38. All the numbers are the same to him. So
well, and the numbers are all starting
north.
to shift now, so it's going to get confusing really quickly.
It'll get even more confusing.
So,
Chief Rabble-rouser.
Oh, District 38, like it says right here.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and Chief Rabble-rouser, yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, last night, we teased that we were having a guest who was a puppet master and evil genius, because that's what we keep hearing about you. And so
those are titles that have been conferred to you.
Yeah.
So we're having Jared on for a few segments tonight because he's given a lot of credit, some of it deserved,
some of it
for what's happening in the state
most of it.
with politics. And so we're going to cover a lot of topics. Now, one of the things that we want to talk to you about is the state committee meeting.
Yes.
So that's coming up.
November 13th. This is coming Saturday.
And tell us what it entails. Why is it important to the Republican Party? Why is it important to the people of North Dakota?
Sure. Well, it's important. I'll start the second question. It's important to the people of North Dakota because the Republican Party is the dominant political party. In fact, it's really the only relevant political party at this point in time. As you know, in the legislature, there's almost no Democrats. So the Republicans have all the statewide offices. They have super majorities. They have all the political power in the state, which means that anything that we can and want to accomplish politically, there is literally no reason that we can't do it, right? So the state committee is the governing body of that entity, which has all the political power. And it's very important that people understand that because it's a very small select group of people that has that power and influence. We're talking about these committees are 10 to 18 people in each of the 47 legislative districts. And they're elected in the odd numbered years, so we just had that earlier this year. But that entity is the governing body of the party. It decides the platform, it develops the rules for the convention, which endorses their statewide candidates. It sends, ultimately calls a convention to send delegates to the national convention, which of course affects who the president of the United States can be. So all of those things happen ultimately through the state committee.
And the state committee is made up of how many people?
There's a, now I'm bad with math, 57, I think, if I'm doing my math correctly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking 47 different districts.
Yes, and then there's an executive team, which of course you are one of those. You're a national committee woman. We have a national committee man, party chair, vice chair, second vice chair, secretary treasurer. The majority leader of the House and Senate are on there. The chairman of the College Republicans and the Young Republicans are on there. So the
then
committee
we also
in total.
have then also representatives for each of the congressional delegation as well. So.
Yeah, well, there's actually the rules say that there's a representative of the statewide elected officials.
And they're just ex officio, or?
No, they have voting power. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just clearing it up for everybody.
So what I'm hearing things.
Yeah.
What are we looking at for this upcoming meeting? There seems to be a lot of concern about the party and the grassroots and the interplay. So what are some of the topics at hand?
Yeah, so there's a number of proposed amendments, and some of them are, and I have the packet here. We can dive deep into them if you want to, but one of the packets is called clerical changes, and it is mostly clerical changes. Although I always chuckle a little bit and you deal with this in legislature. We have housekeeping bills, and I always chuckle a little bit because very often there's things in there that are not clerical or not really housekeeping, and there are some things in this proposal that fall in that category, but so, for example, they want to change the resolutions committee process. They want to restrict it, in my opinion. And for those who don't know, the resolutions committee is what develops the party's platform, essentially, which is the things that we believe in, the things to which we publicly prescribe and to which our donors give to us on the condition that we're saying that we support these things. So, and which means, in my opinion, if we're not supporting them, we're engaging in fraud. So it's very important, and they are proposing things that, in my opinion, reduce that power, that concentrate the power more into the hands of the region chairs who are on the executive committee, and take that power away from the district chairs. My opinion is this is a direct response to the fact that last year we developed and adopted a very, very conservative platform. I'd say it's the most conservative platform we've had,
Agreed.
at least
Ever?
in the time probably ever. So I think that there's some pushback. Probably the most concerning proposal is one, and I'm sure in part it's being put in just to start the discussion, but they want to they are proposing to move the convention after the primary.
Meaning that it would basically render a convention
Yeah,
useless and moot, wouldn't it? If you're
Well, it would render the party useless, because the convention is the party. I mean, the whole point of a private organization is that it's people who privately agree to come together.
a deliberative assembly.
Yes, a deliberative assembly. They agree on the principle through voluntary association to come together for a cause or a set of causes. That is the essence of what a political party is.
So speak to what happens if the primary is first then. What happens?
Well, and by the way I see it, and this is a big debate about convention versus primary, and there's a lot of nuance to this, but I'll just break it down. At least one aspect of it is that, in general, by going with the primary, you award the big money candidates who can dump $2 million. They have the name ID. They can fill your mailboxes with a bunch of fancy looking postcards. Whereas the convention is really kind of the great equalizer, because if you're very effective at organizing with grassroots people, like when Rick ran for governor, it was a very similar dynamic. You were not the, quote, big money candidate, it was safe to say, but you were able to work hard and organize the delegates and organize the grassroots and tap into the passions that ignites people, and you had a strong showing. And there are other candidates who have been able to do that as well over the years. So when you take that away, you really remove, I think, the great kind of equalizer. And so you do award the consultant class, the people that can drop all that money in a primary. And so the question is really, is that going to give us the best candidates? Is that going to give us the candidates that are most reflective of the stated ideology of the party? And is that good for voters? At the end of the day, and I think you could argue it's not.
Well, the primary also leaves it up to the general public, which means that people could technically cross party lines, could they not, in a primary situation?
Sure. Yeah, and because
Well, they did big time for Burgum in 2016. They crossed in huge fashion.
Yeah,
I did calculations, I think, on the order of possibly 20,000 votes.
Wow.
If you're extrapolating previous numbers and looking at ratios, and then a smaller number, but still there was crossover in 2020 in favor of the people that Burgum was because the Democrats will identify that Burgum is a very much a moderate or progressive, much like they are, and the people he supports are as well. So they want to, in a primary, support Doug's people because they know then the conservative is not winning, and there's a ton of crossover.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence to that effect. And you also really run into a problem, because one of the arguments in favor of primary is that, well, we collect all this great data and everything from these primary campaigns, and the parties is enhanced by that data. Of course, that kind of dodges the fact that you collect a lot of really good data from maybe a smaller group of people, but the delegates who are your volunteers, and what is the worth of a single volunteer? I mean,
huge.
Not that voters are obviously important, but
Right.
a single volunteer has the value of 1,000 voters probably, right? In that abstract sense.
Yeah.
So that's one of the problems. The other thing is that if the party is worried about data, there's nothing that prevents the party from just having a team to gather data year round and to use that data to support its endorsed candidates. So you don't need a primary to gather data. You can gather data through other avenues anyway.
So we are talking about, this blows me away. We're talking about the state Republican Party, and that there's a state committee meeting, and you've got different proposals that they're looking at, changing the rules, amending things, and they are actually, and this is serious, you're saying, they are considering a proposal in which they would move the convention, where we all get together and we choose who the Republicans, and they're typically the activists, the people that are most interested in politics, grassroots. They all get together and choose their endorsed candidates, right? For everything, statewide. And then that person goes to the primary. Other people can go to the primary, like Doug Burgum did or Kevin Kramer did. But you're saying that they're proposing to put that after the primary, and I'm trying to figure out what purpose, what literal purpose is there in having a convention after the primary if it's simply to rubber stamp who won in the primary?
Yeah, well, it's a trick question because there really is no purpose, because if you get rid of the meaning of the endorsement, then there really is no purpose. But it's kind of a trick question because I think in the minds of those who are proposing it, the purpose will become to simply rubber stamp the candidate who wins the primary, which in their minds, their justification, I think, is largely based on the idea that if you're a candidate who can raise a lot of money, get the vote out in the primary, that you will therefore be a stronger candidate in the general election. You could argue there's some evidence to that, although there's plenty of candidates that the Republicans have won statewide that have come out of convention also. So it's kind of, I wouldn't say that's a distinguishing characteristic.
It's not a precedent where you would,
Right. And again, that's apart from the point that you brought up about we don't have voter registration, so it's not really, is it really the Republican candidate if it's more than just Republicans voting in the primary. And this is a big discussion, convention versus primary, but the irony of this proposal, though, really, what it really comes down to is that you can make a strong argument for the convention. Some would make a strong argument for the primary, but the reality of North Dakota Century Code is that we have both currently, right? So why would you propose this when you can just bypass it and go to the primary anyway, right? What's the point of this? You're simply removing the ability or the option of the party to galvanize its base behind one candidate heading into the primary. So by taking that away, it's just, to me, it serves essentially no purpose, again, except to rubber stamp and, in my opinion, unintentionally perhaps, or intentionally, concentrate more power in the hands of big money in this state.
So
and how about the media? I mean, that puts media in play rather than the grassroots, does it not?
Yeah, yes, to a very large extent. And now that's not to say that media doesn't play into a convention campaign or that you don't need money for a convention campaign. I mean, it's all the above. But again, like I said, it's the great equalizer. If you can mobilize a grassroots army, and plus the other reason is that politics is supposed to go to those who show. That's kind of the principle of our system, right? We have a representative system, and the party is kind of a microcosm of that. And so the delegates that each of the districts send represent the people of their district. Right. So I just think that it's a very bad precedent.
I'm just blown away because we are hearing about how there's we hear from legislators that the platform doesn't really mean anything.
Well, it doesn't when you don't act on it.
Right. Well, and so their position is it doesn't mean anything. I represent all the voters. The state party is trying to weaken the resolution process. So we have a platform that doesn't mean anything. Resolutions that we only are, you have to twist our arm if we're going to have anything. And then a convention, which is just to rubber stamp whatever the voters at large did in the primary. So what's the purpose of the party? I mean, there's no purpose.
Right.
There exists no purpose, right, except to say I belong to a club and I pay $36 a year or whatever it is, and I'm part of a club.
Yeah, and that really is the mindset of many people, unfortunately, on the state committee. And I say that not conjecture. I mean, I've had some that literally have said that, and they've said it in some cases in the meetings, that our purpose as a party is to get people elected. Well, my opinion is that the purpose of the party is to advance its principles, because simply getting someone elected is not a distinguishing characteristic of a political party, because you can get elected as an independent, right?
Sure.
So the purpose of a party, if you go back through the history in America, to whether it's the Federalists, Anti-Federalists, the Whig, the Lecompton Democrats, the anti-Lecompton Democrats, the Georgists, the Green Party, whatever, every political party ever has existed for the purpose of advancing an agenda.
Absolutely.
And if you don't advance an agenda, then your only purpose, by definition, is the acquisition of power, which is winning elections. And so I would make the point of why be involved? If simply acquiring power is the goal, why be involved?
Right.
Right.
It blows me away. There should be no doubt in anyone's mind that the purpose of the party is to affect change, to try and institute a government or policies that go along with certain principles. And the reason why you want to win elections is because those people allegedly espouse those principles to help carry that change forward.
Right.
It's not about being, we could have East Dakota and West Dakota party, and then it's just about whoever wins the most seats, because it doesn't mean anything. And I don't know, man, I'm just blown away that at this stage, the state Republican Party is moving so far in that direction, and it's based on a reaction to some things they don't like with regard to grassroots, right? With some of the districts being taken over by more conservatives and the censures. And so what they're doing is the exact opposite of what they should be doing. They're further marginalizing those people that have a passion about being conservative, and instead of saying, what can we do to address these people's concerns?
Right, and the great irony of it is that those who do espouse the position that we like to win elections, and we do, I mean, who doesn't like to win elections?
Right.
That is one of the purposes of a party, to try to get your candidates elected who are aligned with your professed
Exactly.
values.
Right.
But the irony of it is when you, frankly, stomp out your grassroots like this, what's going to happen? I mean, that grassroots energy is there. It's not disappearing. I mean, look at the rally. I know we're going to talk about the rally we had yesterday at the Capitol. That energy is not going away. It's escalating. It is in the last year and a half, it has escalated, and it's going to continue to escalate. So if the party but literally shuts those grassroots conservatives out, they are going to go somewhere. And so I really think party leadership should think about this, and I've said this over and over and over, that it's an opportunity for party leadership. It's an opportunity to lead on these things, because really it's a microcosm of where voters are. That's the other thing, is if they're saying this is about the election of voters, if you poll most Republican voters on the issues of the Republican platform, they agree with most of them. I mean, there's nooks and crannies, maybe not 100% agreement, that's fine. But
That's to be expected, though.
yeah, I mean, most of those issues poll well, frankly, nationally as well.
Wow. And then there was something that I've heard about with regard to you have to, in order to be elected to certain positions at the state party, you have to pay money? Or is that one of the proposals?
There is a proposal that for certain statewide candidate position, or I believe it's all statewide candidate positions, that you would have a filing fee. Now,
And that we have not had that ever before.
not to my knowledge. Now, other states, like where I'm from in Virginia,
That's common.
they do have a filing fee, I believe, for governors, like $10,000 or something. But in Virginia, the convention is actually legally binding. So in other words, if you are endorsed by the convention, you are placed on the general election ballot, not the primary.
Ah.
So I would argue that it actually makes sense more so.
Sure.
Right,
I don't think
right.
it makes sense in our case, the North Dakota Republican Party, but it especially doesn't make sense if the convention is deemed irrelevant by making it post-primary. Then why would you give any money to the party?
Right.
If the party's
Well, where's it
endorsement means
going?
nothing, why would you ever give money to the party?
Sure.
Like, I almost hope, I don't know. It's kind of like I hope Minneapolis was going to pass defunding the police, just because I want to sit with my popcorn and watch the crap show happen. If the Republican Party does this in North Dakota, I'm going to be having that popcorn, man, and
Sure.
it's going to be a crap show.
Yeah, watch the volunteers disappear, watch the donors dry up, watch the Democrats eventually make gains. It will happen.